Hello, it's Get Good Fox here, and welcome to the final video of 2018. In this episode, we're going to be concerning ourselves with the 3 weapon skills: striking, which is a blunt weapon specialization, swordplay, which is a bladed weapon specialization, and close combat, which uses knives. We're going to look at what they're good at, what they're bad at in a variety of situations against single zombies, hordes, ferals, and juggernauts, and see which one is the best, if there is one that is the best. It could very well be a sort of toolbox situation, where who's to say what's better out of a screwdriver, a hammer, a wrench, and a saw? They each have their own uses, but I'm going to go ahead and pick one that I think is actually the best because I think it's boring to just say they're all good in their own way. It's not fun. We want to have fun, don't we? Now, the good reason to take a look at these specializations is because in the 5.0 update, which was Zedhunter, Undead Labs added 4 new items, these training manuals that allow you to re-specialize a particular skill. You can purchase these retraining manuals. There is one for each skill, and they're going to cost 1,500 influence, and they're sold by mysterious traders on the weekends. But they don't just re-specialize. They don't allow you to just choose a second time. They also unlock all of the possible options. So if originally your character could only pick from 2 of the skills, say endurance and striking, using the retraining manual will let them pick from all 4 of the skills instead of the original 2, and now I think you can see the point of this video. Last 2 things I want to say, though, is 1, I'm not going to talk about the endurance skill. I mainly want to talk about the weapon-specific specializations. And I will talk about the weapon that I'm using for each of these specializations. Just keep in mind that they're all going to be DLC items. If you don't own the DLC and you want an alternative, I'll probably have to make that a different video because this video is already pretty damn long. Anyways, let's get started, beginning with the striking skill and therefore blunt weapons. This is the style that I have the most personal experience with because whenever I level up the fighting skill, I always get striking. The striking skill only comes into play if you're equipping a blunt weapon, and what it mainly does is improve your knockdown stat with the equipped weapon, which is very important for the blunt playstyle. You'll notice as I kill these ordinary zombies that the thing about blunt weapons is that they don't have a whole lot of lethality to them. They're not going to be killing zombies in 1 or 2 hits. Instead, you can expect a blunt weapon to kill with just regular swipes in about 3, 4, sometimes 5 hits. And that just isn't very efficient at all. So the way that blunt weapons compensate for this, and therefore the striking skill, is through executions. The blunt weapon skill is heavily reliant on executions. With a high knockdown skill, you can just swat enemies down, they fall over, and then bam, you execute them. You can see, even against a horde of zombies, it's really not a big deal because another one of the big benefits of the blunt weapons, of the striking skill, is that blunt weapons can sweep through multiple enemies even without the special ability you get. Speaking of the special ability, I'll demonstrate it right here. It is this little turnaround swing that has a little bit of a delay to it, so you might get interrupted, but when you do get it off, it will just sweep through and knock all the zombies away. And this is highly disruptive to crowds of zombies. Even the regular attacks is just very disruptive in general. It makes it very hard for crowds of zombies to actually get a hit on you. On the other hand, it does take a little while to execute them all, and sometimes if there's just a crap load of zombies, you do wind up having to just swat them down, just beat the crap out of them with regular swings. But the point is that it's very safe. Blunt weapons with a high knockdown stat are really, really safe to use against hordes of zombies. So it's kind of tedious to use against single zombies, but very good against hordes. How does it fare against ferals? Well, striking has you covered here because it is capable of stunning the feral. Bash it across the head a few times, it'll get a head concussion, and in this state, you can actually execute it. And only the blunt weapons are capable of doing this. The bladed weapons and the knives, they can kill a feral, they can chop it up or stab it to death, but they cannot stun it and kill it with such efficiency with an execution. So striking and blunt, big time bonus for dealing with ferals. What about juggernauts, though? Against the Juggernaut, I would say it's probably the worst weapon because you really just need to get a volume of hits on a Juggernaut, and the blunt weapon, it's just on the slow side, which means that its time to kill won't be as quick as the other weapons. But it still gets the job done. It's not like the Juggernaut is immune or resistant to the blunt attacks. Alright, let's get into the stats now. Blunt weapons have a tendency to be very durable but have low lethality, meaning you can swing and beat up things a lot and it'll take a while for them to break down, but they don't kill enemies very efficiently, hence why you want to go for executions. The big stats you're looking for is ease of use, so that it reduces the amount of stamina per swing, durability, because you do not want these kinds of weapons to break quickly because you have to hit things so much, and knockdown, because ideally you want to knock a zombie down in one hit. That's very efficient. One swing, one knockdown, one execution. And to that end, I chose the Cleo Mace. This is a weapon from the Daybreak DLC, which unfortunately means you will have to play the Daybreak mode in order to get it. But once you've got it, you got it, because it doesn't cost prestige points to repair, thank God. You can see here, though, that it's got great durability, great ease of use, and great knockdown. So it's efficient, knocks the zombies down, beats the crap out of them, and it takes a while to break down. But now it's on to Swordplay, the bladed weapons. Swordplay improves the lethality stat of any bladed weapon you have, which is its most important stat, so that's super good. And it also gives you access to the leg sweep ability, and then later on a standing execution when you fully master the skill. This style is very efficient against small numbers of zombies, so just the individual zombie you run into kills them very effortlessly, because weapons with a high lethality are more likely to kill a zombie in 1 or 2 hits. And let me tell you, it does feel really good if you kill like 4 zombies one after the other with 1 stroke each. On the other hand, swords are not as easy to use against big groups of zombies, against hordes, as blunt weapons are, because swords cannot sweep through multiple targets. You can only hit 1 zombie at a time, so if they're all over you, the others that are not getting stunned by your swings are going to get an attack in. So you wind up having to kind of bob and weave, take swings where it's safe, and then dodge. And this can eat up your stamina pretty quickly. It can also lead to a lot of damage if you're impatient and not looking for good opportunities to attack. One of the things you can do, though, is use the leg sweep ability. This is really good against the armored zombies, who are pretty resistant to being chopped up. But by sweeping off the legs of the zombies, you prevent them from being able to stand, and they gotta crawl towards you. So if you're fighting like 20 zombies and you hack 10 of their legs off, you'll effectively divide them into 2 hordes of 10, a fast-moving group and a slow-moving group, which will allow you to deal with them more effectively. But it's still much harder than using a blunt weapon. Another problem is that swords naturally have a lower durability. There are a few exceptions, but beating the crap out of a bunch of enemies is going to cause the sword to break down pretty quickly. And you can see here that now that my weapon is broken, I'm forced to use my knife, and because I don't have the close combat specialization, my knife is very sluggish, very awkward. But I recorded this as mainly a comparison for the close combat specialization coming up. Against ferals, this weapon is probably the worst, and the reason for that is because it takes a lot of hits to kill a feral. It's going to beat up the sword dramatically, and the feral is capable of dodging out of the hits. Now, you can, in return, dodge the feral when it swings at you and then begin beating the crap out of it, but you'll have to go through this dance a few times before it dies, and it's going to deplete the sword's durability significantly. Against the Juggernaut, on the other hand, I would say it is actually the most effective weapon, because look how fast you start hacking into this Juggernaut. It's crazy how fast you go. It doesn't take long at all to down the Juggernaut and then execute it. I was actually really surprised with how effective these swords were, because I never just went up to a Juggernaut and just dedicatedly attacked it with just a sword. Just keep in mind that it still takes a lot of hits to take the Juggernaut down, so it's really going to bang the sword up. Lastly, before we talk about stats, let's take a look at the maximum skill, which is the standing execution. When you get Swordplay up to 7 stars, you will be able to just walk up to a zombie and just automatically execute it, which makes killing single zombies even more efficient, and it also just allows you to carve up those armored zombies with no problem at all. However, it does use up quite a bit of stamina, so I don't recommend using it against hordes. One, because the zombies can actually attack you and knock you out of it, but it's also just super exhausting. Anyways, let's talk about the stats now. Bladed weapons, axes, swords, what have you, they have a tendency to be very fragile, but very deadly. So on one hand, if you're getting fortunate and you're killing zombies in 1 or 2 strikes, then you're not really losing too much durability. But sometimes a zombie will take 3 or 4 hits, and it just eats into your durability pretty quickly. It also means that any tanky target that can't be insta-killed will devour your weapon's durability. The weapon I chose is the Grass Cutter, which comes from the Prepper's Pack DLC. And the reason I chose it is because it has excellent lethality, a great ease of use, and great durability by sword standards. Alright, last but not least, we're going to talk about close combat, which I'm just going to call CQC for short close quarters combat. CQC uses knives, and that means you actually have to de-equip your primary weapon and just use your basic knife, be it a screwdriver, a chef's knife, or something a little more fancy like me, like the Echo C1 Stiletto. That said, it's purely cosmetic. None of the close combat weapons have different stats. That means they also don't have durability, which means they never break down and they never need to be repaired. So their first big advantage is that they don't cost any parts to maintain. The CQC skill itself drastically improves your ability to use these kinds of weapons by improving your attack speed pretty dramatically, as well as providing an increasing reduction to stamina usage, where when you fully max out the skill, it will feel pretty efficient on the stamina. You use a combination of stabbing and grappling techniques, and the weapon really shines against enemies who have fallen down. You can really shank up these zombies, and it's really satisfying and enjoyable, especially when you get them on the ground and you just start stabbing the crap out of their face. But it does take quite a few hits. On the other hand, the execution on down zombies is extremely fast and efficient. But it does use up a noticeable amount of stamina, especially in the beginning when you haven't had that stacking stamina reduction bonus. Like the Swordplay skill, you also get a standing execution when you max out CQC, and that just trivializes one-on-one combat against normal zombies and even against smaller groups. It's also a fairly quick execution, so even against larger groups, as long as you're not completely surrounded or actually being attacked as you attempt the grapple, you can actually get away with some standing executions against hordes. Speaking of hordes, though, this is definitely an area where the weapon takes a lot of practice. This weapon is not inherently good against crowds of enemies. And you have to be really careful, especially if you're fighting plague zombies, because you're going to get a lot of little miscellaneous hits on you. And if you get infected with full-blown blood plague, then it's basically like you're completely out of stamina all the time, making you actually quite vulnerable to the zombies. If you feel like you can't take on a big-ass horde of zombies, one of the things you can do is just jump over like a fence or something and let the zombies chase after you. Because the zombies aren't very dexterous, they'll typically crumple up and fall to the ground, where you can use the very efficient, very quick ground executions on the zombies. And then when enough of them get back up, you just jump onto the other side, rinse, wash, and repeat. So there are techniques for dealing with hordes, but the weapon is just naturally not great at dealing with them. Another skill that you get is your basic special skill, the shove. And the shove can be used either to create space between the zombies so that you can attack a different target, or as a tool to knock zombies down where you can then execute them. Zombies typically won't fall down on the first shove. You'll either have to shove them multiple times, or you'll have to hit them a time or two, unless you shove them from behind, and that's an automatic knockdown. I don't actually use the shove that frequently, though. I prefer to just dodge around and stab the crap out of them. CQC also gives you a unique from-behind execution, which is the same one that the Red Talon agents use. It's a very rapid, high-efficiency execution, so dodging through the zombies, grabbing them from behind, and just stabbing their head is a pretty good option. Just watch the stamina usage. So how does this weapon perform against ferals? I never actually tried it until now, and I was pleasantly surprised to find it's actually very effective. As long as you're fighting the feral in one-on-one combat, you will find that you can stun-lock the feral. He can't escape, and you just shank the crap out of him until he's dead. And there's no weapon durability, so it doesn't matter how many hits he takes. Now, I have seen him be able to escape, but that was one time out of the 6 different ferals I killed, so be aware that he can escape, but it was fairly reliable to stun-lock him. On the other hand, this weapon is not good if there's interference. Let's watch me fight 2 ferals with just my knife and some healing items.
Almost out. need a breather. That's all I got.
Very painful, but hell, I eventually got him. So what about against a Juggernaut, though? Once again, I was doubtful. I didn't think it would be very good, but it wound up actually being a pretty good option against the Juggernaut. And once again, no durability damage. Look at this, it's pretty efficient. Now, unlike the other weapons, these kinds of close combat weapons, these various knife-type weapons, they don't have any stats, so you just pick the one that you think looks good, and I chose the Echo C1 Stiletto. This is also, I guess, technically a DLC weapon, but it's a free DLC. It was added in the 5.0 Zedhunter update. Alright though, let's recap and then I will pronounce what I think is the best weapon. The striking skill, and therefore blunt weapons, is really good against crowds of zombies, but it's a bit tedious to use one-on-one because you have to knock the zombies down and execute them because it has a low lethality. It's very good against ferals because you can beat them up, get them in a stunned state, and then execute them. And I would say it's probably the worst against juggernauts due to the slow time to kill. Swordplay, and therefore the bladed weapons, is really good in one-on-one combat, but it's not too good against hordes. You'll have to be careful. You need to weave in and out of the attacks and take attacks where it's safe. It's the least effective against ferals because it beats up the weapon, takes a lot of hits, and the ferals are able to escape unless you can pin them against a wall. But it's actually the best against juggernauts because for some reason you start going to town on them and chopping the crap out of them. Lastly, you have close quarters combat, and this one takes the most practice and skill to use, but it's very good against single zombies. It struggles quite a bit against hordes of zombies. It's very good against ferals if you can stun lock them. And hey, it's surprisingly good against juggernauts too. And all through this, you don't have to use any parts to repair the weapon. But now it's time to choose because it's true that all of them do have their uses, but I'm not going to be boring. I'm going to pick. And there's going to be two categories. The first category goes to the blunt weapons, to the striking skill as the most effective melee weapon. It's good against the two main threats that you commonly fight. Hordes of zombies and ferals. And because it's so good against them, I think we can forgive striking for being a bit weak against singles and juggernauts. The second category, though, is going to be the most fun. And I'm giving that to close combat. I have no idea. I just really enjoy stabbing the shit out of the zombies. And I'm just highly amused that we've got this whole David and Goliath stabbing the crap out of the juggernaut with surprising effectiveness. That doesn't mean that swordplay and blades are bad. I actually enjoy it quite a bit too. It's very fast-paced and it's just very satisfying to get the one-hit kills, but I gotta pick something, and that's what I chose. Anyways, tell me in the comments section what your favorite weapon is, and maybe I've convinced you to try one that you didn't think about previously. Let me know if I did. Like this video if it was interesting or helpful. Subscribe to my channel for future State of K2 content. Remember that you don't have to be good to get good, and have a fantastic New Year's.